All right, listen up. Let's get straight to it. Think of this as your final briefing before you walk into that exam. We are going to cut through all the noise and focus only on the high-yield abdominal anatomy that shows up time and time again on the MRCEM primary, so pay close attention.
Look, we don't have time to cover every single detail, and honestly, you don't need to. This is a rapid-fire review. We're hitting the concepts that are tested most frequently and pointing out the common traps where people lose easy marks. We're going to start with the body's main highway, the abdominal aorta, and its critical landmarks.
Okay, let's get into it. The first thing you need to do is build a mental map of the abdomen, and that map has to be anchored to the vertebral column. The abdominal aorta, running from T12 down to L4, is your absolute #1 reference point. Knowing the vertebral levels of its branches, that isn't just good to know, it is essential.
Right. Let's lock these levels in right now. I've got a simple mnemonic that makes this a piece of cake. Just think, celery soup is really important. So you've got celiac at L1, superior mesenteric also at L1, renal at L2, and inferior mesenteric at L3. They just peel off in perfect order. But listen, the one they love, the one they will almost certainly test you on, is the renal arteries. They branch off at L2. If you remember nothing else from this slide, burn this into your brain. Renal arteries, L2. Got it?
Okay, so we've got our central line, the aorta. Now we expand outwards from there. Clinically, as you know, we slice the abdomen into 9 regions to help us pinpoint what's wrong. And that grid, it's made by just 2 vertical and 2 horizontal planes. Let's see exactly what they are.
So out of all these, the one you really need to focus on is the transpyloric plane. Why? Because it cuts right through the L1 vertebra. That's the same level where the celiac trunk and the SMA come off the aorta. See how it all connects? It's a huge anatomical crossroads. Examiners absolutely expect you to know that the transpyloric plane is at L1. Just commit that to memory. Now let's move to the abdominal wall.
Now for a topic that I swear trips up so many candidates, the rectus sheath. It's not as simple as you think. Its structure completely changes at one key landmark, and that landmark is the arcuate line. Understanding this transition is, believe me, non-negotiable for passing this exam.
Okay, before I just give you the answer, stop for a second. Use your active recall. What actually happens to the posterior wall of the rectus sheath once you drop below the arcuate line? Seriously, picture it. This is a classic exam question, and it's designed to see if you really understand the anatomy, not just if you've memorized it.
And here it is. This table shows the change perfectly. Above the arcuate line, everything is nicely wrapped. But look at what happens below the line. All 3 of the flat muscle aponeurosis swing around to the front. What does that leave behind? Well, it leaves the posterior wall incredibly thin. It's made up of only the transversalis fascia. Clinically, this is a big deal. It creates a potential weak spot, a perfect place for hernias to pop through. Let me give you a pro tip, straight from an examiner. A very common distractor question will suggest that the transversus abdominis aponeurosis is part of the posterior wall below the arcuate line. It is not. The correct answer is only the transversalis fascia. They will test you on this specific detail. You need to be ready for it.
And just remember, the sheath is more than just a home for the rectus abdominis muscle. It's a busy highway. You've got the epigastric vessels, lymphatics, and the terminal ends of nerves T7 through T12 all running through it. Any of those are fair game for a question. Okay, we've looked at dividers in the wall. Now let's zoom in on 2 other critical anatomical boundaries where absolutely everything changes. One is deep in the anal canal, and the other is in the biliary system. Trust me, these are very high-yield transition zones. First up, the pectinate line. This is not just some random line drawn in a textbook. It's a real embryological boundary. And because of where it comes from, it dictates a massive shift in nerves, blood supply, and, importantly, lymphatic drainage. So here's the clinical takeaway. Above the line is visceral innervation, so it's insensitive to pain. That's why internal hemorrhoids don't typically hurt. But below the line, it's somatic. From the pudendal nerve, it is incredibly sensitive. That's why external hemorrhoids are so painful. And look at the lymphatics. A cancer above the line drains deep into the pelvis to the internal iliac nodes, but below the line, it drains to the superficial inguinal nodes in the groin. That is a massive, massive clinical difference. Okay, from the very end of the GI tract, let's jump all the way up to the biliary system. You have to know the precise pathway of bile flow. It's essential for figuring out what's going on in imaging and understanding things like biliary obstruction.
Let's just trace this pathway real quick. Bile flows from the hepatic ducts, gets joined by the cystic duct, and they form the common bile duct. That then meets up with the pancreatic duct. But here is the money shot, the fact they love to test. Where does it all end up? It all drains into the second part of the duodenum. You have to know that endpoint. Why? Because a gallstone stuck at that final junction blocks both pathways, giving you biliary and pancreatic symptoms. That's the clinical connection they want you to make.
Okay, let's bring it all together. If you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, just focus on these next points. This is your final debrief. These are the absolute must-know facts you walk in with on exam day.
These are your 3 pillars. Number 1, the posterior rectus sheath is only transversalis fascia below the arcuate line. Number 2, everything changes at the pectinate line, especially lymph drainage and pain sensation. And number 3, the renal arteries are at L2. Burn these 3 facts into your memory. They are reliable, go-to exam questions year after year.
Look, anatomy isn't about memorizing a list of parts. It's about understanding relationships and, more than anything, understanding transitions. Because where things change, that's where pathology loves to happen. And that's what we, as examiners, want to know if you understand. Master these points, and you will be well prepared. Good luck.